Hello everyone. Today's topic is closing volume. So in this video, we will be going through a bit about the alveolar structure, the definitions of closing volume and closing capacity, residual volume, how we go about measuring the closing volume, and also factors that affect the closing volume and its clinical significance. This is a small diagram which shows the tail end of the tracheal tree. Here we see the terminal bronchioles finally branching out into the various alveoli. And here is an electron microscope view showing serially enlarged views of the alveoli getting bigger and bigger. And as we see here, we see that the alveoli are in fact very delicate structures and they lack supporting cartilage. It is in fact just a thin liquid layer of osmophilic material, and so therefore they depend on other factors to keep them open during the process of respiration. This is a schematic diagram showing the terminal bronchioles finally opening up into the alveoli. And here we see that these alveoli are in fact like say a rubber band. So the alveoli here are kept open only because of traction from the nearby alveolar septa. So during expiration, the traction forces on this alveoli gradually decreases, and so the airways also become smaller and smaller in diameter, and finally they collapse on themselves. So therefore, closing capacity is the lung volume at which these small airways, the respiratory bronchioles, collapse completely. To put that picture into many words, the peripheral small airways constantly tend to collapse because of Laplace's law and also the lack of supportive framework. We saw the electron microscope picture of the alveoli, which shows that alveoli are very delicate and don't have any cartilage to act as a supportive framework. So their natural tendency is to collapse on themselves. During inspiration, the airways are kept open because the neighboring alveolar septal tissue pulls them apart and keeps them open. However, during expiration, the alveolar septa stop pulling at the alveoli, and gradually, as the air moves out of the lung, the airways grow smaller and smaller and finally collapse on themselves. So it is like a elastic rubber band, and the alveolar septa are like the hands that keep the airways open. During expiration, the lung volume gradually decreases and the airway diameter also slowly decreases. Therefore, there is a lung volume at which the stretch can no longer oppose the forces acting to collapse the airway, and finally the airway closes, and when it closes, it traps some of the gases inside it. When we think of the lung, we have to remember that the airways which are present in the dependent portion of the lung, that is the basal segments, are the smallest. And this is because they have the weight of the entire lung on the basal segments. And therefore, these airways are most prone to collapse. The closing capacity is thus the volume of the lungs at which its smallest airways, that is the respiratory bronchioles, collapse. Mathematically, we represent this as the sum of two volumes, the residual volume and the closing volume, where closing volume is the lung volume at which the airway closure begins. To recap on what a residual volume is found, this is the classic diagram showing the lung volumes and capacities. Here in the middle, we have tidal volume, which is what is the volume during normal inspiration and normal expiration. If a person was to give an additional expiratory effort, then this is the maximum amount of air that can be expired, and that is the expiratory reserve volume. Even after expiratory reserve volume, there is a volume of air left behind in the lungs which can never be pushed out despite maximal effort, and that is the residual volume. And closing capacity is the sum of that residual volume and the closing volume. Now we have two ways in which we can measure closing capacity. They have been named the gas bolus method and the resident gas method. They are named thus because in the gas bolus method, we use gas given in a bolus dose to measure closing volume. And in the resident gas method, we use a gas which is already a resident of the lungs to measure the closing volume. So the gas bolus method historically happens to be the first method that was used to measure the closing volume. The original scientists who performed this chose a tracer gas, which was xenon. It is a gas distinct from the normal respiratory gases, and preferably it should be an inert one so that it doesn't react unnecessarily with the other gases in the lungs. The subject is then made to exhale maximally until they reach residual volume. At this point, at residual volume, the airways have collapsed in the dependent lung regions. The subject then inhales slowly up to TLC, the total lung capacity. Because at the residual volume, the small distal airways in the dependent areas of the lungs have closed, the upper alveoli actually gets the maximum amount of tracer gas. The tracer gas here was a bolus dose of xenon. After filling their lungs, the subject then exhales slowly back down to RV. As the subject exhales, we have a sensor which measures the tracer gas concentration. And when represented in a graph, we see that there were four distinct phases observed on the graph. Phase 1, 2, 3, and 4 respectively. And here this graph shows the different color shades representing phase 1 here, phase 2, phase 3, and finally phase 4. Phase 1 is actually the gas that comes out initially when the patient begins to expire. So this phase 1, here we see that the tracer gas is almost zero because here only the air from the dead space is coming out. Here in phase 2, we see the gas coming out from, it's a mixture of gases from the dead space as well as the alveoli. Phase 3 shows that the graph tends to plateau here a little bit. Here we have alveolar gas from both the upper alveoli as well as the lower lung regions. Here, as phase 4 begins, we notice that suddenly there is an increase in the level of tracer gas. This is because at this dotted line, that is the level in which the patient reaches his residual volume. Beyond this, all the lower alveoli have closed, meaning that the tracer gas rich air from only the upper alveoli is being measured beyond this point, which would indicate why there is a sudden increase in the concentration of bolus gas. This dotted line or point represents the closing volume. This method is measuring the closing volume and not the closing capacity. This is because in this method, no provision has been made to calculate the residual volume. And as we know, closing capacity is the sum of closing volume as well as residual volume. And since we are not measuring residual volume, we cannot calculate the closing capacity. The second method is the resident gas method. In this method, we notice that there is no radioisotope exposure and therefore it is much less expensive and much more safer. The theory was to use a resident gas, that is a gas which already resides in the airways. But since the gas is nitrogen, it was later renamed as the inert gas or nitrogen gas washout method. The method in which it is done is very similar to the gas bolus method. Here again, the subject exhales to RV, where the dependent alveoli close and only upper airways are open. And the patient is then made to inhale. When he inhales, he is inhaling pure 100% oxygen. Then the subject starts to exhale. And when he exhales, a nitrogen sensor starts to pick up the concentration of nitrogen in again 3 phases, phase 1, 2, 3, and 4. As you can see in these small diagrams here in the corner, phase 1 shows, detects only the gas that comes out from the dead space. There is only oxygen there and no nitrogen, and hence here there is almost a 0 level of nitrogen detected in phase 1. In phase 2, we get a mixture of gases from the upper and the lower alveoli, and they contain a mixture of nitrogen. Because the nitrogen is slowly starting to leak into the air being expired by the patient, we see that the nitrogen levels slowly increase until they start to plateau again. And once they plateau here, at the beginning of phase 4, that is residual volume has been reached. So as you can see in this diagram, the lower airways have already collapsed. So in a small volume of air still coming out from the upper alveoli, there is a large concentration of nitrogen still coming out, and that would explain the sudden increase seen in phase 4. So if say the total amount that we have measured is 5 liters being exhaled, then we know that the gas concentration, the nitrogen concentration began increasing somewhere between 4 liters and 5 liters. So by subtracting the two, we can calculate the closing volume. So now there are a couple of factors which influence the closing capacity. One is the expiratory airflow. Closing capacity increases with an increase in the expiratory flow. So say a person is expiring at 30 ml per minute and another is doing so at 60 ml per minute. So closing capacity would tend to double with the increase in the speed with which expiratory gas is pushed out. Another one is expiratory effort. Any forceful expiratory maneuvers, a cough or a sneeze, can increase closing capacity. Small airway disease. In diseases like asthma and COPD, we notice that there is an increase in the mucus content and also the muscularity of the airways. And because of this, the airway diameter decreases and the airway becomes more narrow. So because the airways are more narrow, they tend to collapse earlier and at higher lung volumes. Increased pulmonary blood volume. The weight of all the extra blood tends to put pressure on the dependent regions of the lung. So the basal areas have maximum weight of extra blood flow through the lungs, and so they remain collapsed at higher lung volumes. A typical example is left ventricular failure. Decreased pulmonary surfactant. Surfactant is a substance that helps to keep the alveoli open. If there is a decrease or absence of surfactant, then there is an increase in in closing capacity because the alveoli cannot remain open. Parenchymal lung disease. Closing capacity increases as lung elastic tissue is lacking in many parenchymal lung diseases. Age. With increase in age, we find that there is a deterioration in the lung elasticity and loss of recoil pressure. Most of this happens as the lung ages and the quality of tissue decreases. The residual volume increases. However, closing volume does not change substantially, and hence closing capacity also increases. This is a graph which shows that with the increase in age, the residual volume gradually increases, thereby increasing the closing volume. This graph specifically points out the findings at 44 years of age and 66 years of age, because these were the mean ages of Scandinavian subjects who were chosen for this study. We noticed that closing capacity is more than supine FRC by age 44, and by age 66, closing capacity has become greater than the FRC in an erect human. Coming to the clinical significance, during induction of anesthesia, it is important to know the kind of individuals who are likely to have an increased closing capacity, because it influences how we pre-oxygenate them before intubating and ventilating them. Also, as the previous graphs have shown, it is also responsible for age-related changes. Also, in patients who are in ICU on long-term ventilation, there is a repeated cycle of alveoli expanding and then collapsing during inspiration and expiration. Due to this repeated cycle of inspiration-expiration, there is biotrauma that happens as time on the ventilator increases, and that can aggravate lung injury. So that's it about closing volume. Thank you.